Fans are already buzzing, wondering who leaked it and why. But the situation became even more explosive when Mendeecees reportedly confronted Kirk Frost on set. According to insiders, words were exchanged, accusations flew. And before anyone could step in, things got physical in a way no one saw coming. Emotions ran high, alliances cracked, and friendships were put to the ultimate test. This wasn't just drama for the cameras, this was raw, unfiltered tension spilling out in front of everyone. With the spotlight now fixed on Yandy, Mendeecees, and Kirk. The question remains, how did things get this out of control? And what shocking truth lies behind this violent clash? Stay tuned, cause this scandal is only getting started. The atmosphere on set was charged from the moment the first crew members arrived that morning. There was a strange kind of silence that hung over the place. The kind that makes everyone walk a little slower, whisper a little quieter, and keep their eyes darting toward each other, waiting for someone else to acknowledge the elephant in the room. People weren't just nervous, they were unsettled. Rumors had already begun swirling before the cameras even started rolling, and the name on everyone's lips was Yandy. Something had leaked, something that no one had expected. And though no one dared to confirm it outright, the whispers grew louder with every passing hour. The shocking claim was that a private tape, LHHATL, involving Yandy, had made its way online. No one knew whether it was real or a cruel fabrication, but the mere suggestion was enough to set off chaos among the cast. The timing couldn't have been worse. The cast was in the middle of shooting a heated storyline. Tensions were already high, and now this scandal threatened to shatter everything. The uncertainty gnawed at everyone, but for Mendeecees, the rumor hit like a punch to the gut. When he arrived on set, his face was grim. There was no lighthearted greeting, no casual small talk, just a man carrying the weight of betrayal and humiliation. Who's behind this? He muttered under his breath, pacing with clenched fists. Crew members avoided eye contact, afraid to be the first to confront him. He knew the cameras weren't rolling yet, but his anger was raw and uncontrollable. For him, this wasn't just a storyline, this was his marriage, his pride, and his family's reputation hanging in the balance. Yandy entered shortly after, her usual calm demeanor dimmed by the unease in the air. She could feel the stares, hear the muttered words when people thought she wasn't listening. And it made her heart pound with anxiety. "This is ridiculous," she whispered to one of the producers, trying to hold back tears. "I didn't do this. I didn't put anything out there." But denial wasn't enough to stop the whispers. Every glance in her direction felt like an accusation, and she could see the doubt even in the eyes of people who had once defended her. The turning point came when Kirk Frost arrived on set. His presence alone seemed to add fuel to the fire. Kirk had a history of controversies of his own, and for some reason the cast immediately linked him to the sudden leak. Maybe it was his reputation for stirring trouble. Or maybe it was because of old grudges that hadn't fully healed. But speculation spread quickly. Could Kirk have had something to do with this? When Mendeecees saw Kirk laughing casually with a group of crew members, his blood boiled. He stormed across the room, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You think this is funny?" he barked, startling everyone around him. Kirk froze for a second, then smirked, a move that only poured gasoline on the fire. "Man, I don't know what you're talking about," Kirk replied coolly. But his tone carried a hint of mockery. "Don't play games with me," Mendeecees shot back, his chest heaving. "You're behind this, aren't you? You wanted to embarrass me, embarrass Yandy. Admit it." The room went silent. Cameras weren't supposed to be rolling yet. A few crew members instinctively pulled out their phones, sensing that something explosive was about to go down. Kirk stepped closer, his grin fading into a cold glare. "You think I got time for your drama?" he said sharply. "Don't put your wife's mess on me." That was all it took. Mendeecees lunged, grabbing Kirk by the collar, and in an instant, chaos erupted. Crew members rushed forward to separate them, but the damage was done. Fists flew, insults were hurled, and the sound of furniture crashing echoed through the set. Yandy screamed, begging Mendeecees to stop, while Rashida, who had been quietly watching from the corner, jumped up to pull her husband away. "Kirk, enough!" she yelled. That production had to be halted immediately. Security was called in, and even then, it took several minutes to drag the men apart. Mendeecees was raging, his shirt torn, his eyes blazing with fury, while Kirk looked equally disheveled but defiant, refusing to back down. "You'll regret this," Mendeecees shouted, pointing a finger at Kirk as he was escorted out. "You don't come after my family. You don't cross that line." The set was left in shambles, props overturned, equipment scattered, and a silence that felt heavier than before. Yandy collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands, overwhelmed by the humiliation of the entire ordeal. Rashida stood by Kirk, trying to calm him down, but her own anger was simmering. "You just had to provoke him, didn't you?" she hissed at her husband, who brushed her off with a bitter laugh. "Please, he came at me. I didn't do anything." But not everyone was convinced. As news of the fight spread, crew members began speculating out loud. Some were certain Kirk knew more than he was letting on, while others believed this was just Mendeecees snapping under the pressure of the scandal. Fans outside the set, who quickly caught wind of the drama through leaked snippets recorded on phones, were already flooding social media with shocked reactions. Hashtags trended within hours, and clips of the altercation began circulating with captions like "Love and hip-hop chaos reaches new heights," and "Mendeecees loses it over Yandy scandal." The fallout was immediate. Producers scrambled to figure out how to handle the situation. They knew the fight couldn't simply be brushed under the rug. It was too big, too dramatic, and too central to the unfolding storyline. At the same time, they were caught between keeping the show's reputation intact and capitalizing on the chaos that had just unfolded. Yandy, still reeling from the allegations, found herself at the center of it all. She tried to reach out to Mendeecees after he was escorted off set, but he refused to pick up her calls. Her texts went unanswered, leaving her in a spiral of panic and guilt. She wanted to believe he would stand by her, that he would see through the rumors. But the look in his eyes during the fight told a different story. He wasn't just angry, he was devastated. The drama didn't stop there. Rashida confronted Yandy in a tense exchange later that evening. "Girl, I don't know what's going on," she said, her voice filled with equal parts concern and suspicion. "But whatever it is, you need to get ahead of it. Because right now, it looks bad." Yandy, her voice shaking, replied, "I swear to you, I didn't leak anything. I don't even know how this got out." Rashida nodded slowly, but her eyes betrayed her doubt. As the night went on, the production team gathered in emergency meetings. Should they shut everything down until the truth came out? Or should they keep filming, knowing that the scandal was drawing more attention than any scripted drama ever could? The uncertainty only deepened the cracks between the cast members. Mendeecees, meanwhile, was at home, pacing his living room with his phone in hand. He couldn't stop replaying the images in his head, the whispers, Kirk's smirk, the way everyone looked at him as if he were the fool. "I won't let them destroy me," he muttered under his breath. "I'll get to the bottom of this." By the time the sun set on that chaotic day, nothing felt the same. Trust was shattered, alliances were shifting, and the cast was left wondering what would happen next. One thing was certain: the scandal had turned the set into a battlefield, and no one was walking away unscathed. The next morning arrived with a heavy tension hanging in the air. The fight between Mendeecees and Kirk had already made its way onto gossip blogs, and the headlines were unforgiving. Screenshots of the altercation were everywhere, with phrases like "set turns into a war zone" and "reality stars can't keep their cool." Fans were divided, some rallying behind Mendeecees, insisting he was only defending his wife, while others accused him of letting his temper spiral out of control. The debate raged on social media, fueling speculation that the show had crossed a line from scripted drama into dangerous territory. Inside Yandy's home, the atmosphere was no better. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, tears welling in her eyes as she read cruel comments accusing her of betraying Mendeecees. "This is destroying me," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. The worst part was the silence from her husband. Mendeecees had left the house early, refusing to talk, his phone buzzing with unanswered calls. Yandy could sense his distance growing, and it terrified her. RASHEEDA, on the other hand, was fuming. After the chaos of the previous day, she had spent hours trying to calm Kirk down, but her own patience was wearing thin. "You always do this," she snapped at him as they sat in their living room. "You poke the bear and then act like you're innocent when everything blows up." Kirk scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "I didn't do anything. The man came at me for no reason. If he can't handle his wife's mess, that's not my problem." Rashida shook her head in frustration. "You don't get it. This isn't just about you two. The whole cast is caught up in this now, and you're making it worse, as if the scandal itself wasn't enough." Producers decided to push forward with filming, believing that the raw tension would make for unforgettable television. The decision outraged some cast members, but others saw it as an opportunity to air their grievances. When the group was brought back together for a mediated sit-down, the room was a powder keg waiting to explode. The mediator began with calm words, urging everyone to stay respectful, but it didn't take long for voices to rise. Mendeecees sat stiffly in his chair, his jaw tight, while Yandy tried to reach for his hand. He pulled away, sending a clear message of distrust that didn't go unnoticed. Kirk leaned back in his seat, smirking, clearly unfazed by the tension surrounding him. "So let's just put it out there," Kirk said, breaking the silence. "I had nothing to do with whatever tape y'all are talking about, and if you think otherwise, that's on you." His dismissive tone lit a fire in Mendeecees. "You're lying," he spat. "You've always had it out for me, and now you're trying to humiliate my family. I can see it all over your face." Rashida interjected quickly, her voice rising. "Stop it, both of you. This is getting out of hand. Kirk, you need to take some responsibility for the way you antagonize people. And Mendeecees, you need to think about what this is doing to Yandy. She's the one being torn apart by all of this." Yandy finally found her voice, though it cracked with emotion. "I'm sitting here being dragged through the mud, and none of you care how it feels. My name is all over the blogs. My kids are going to see this one day, and all anyone can do is argue about who leaked what. I didn't leak anything. I would never do this to myself." To my family, her words hung in the air. But instead of bringing peace, they only seemed to deepen the divide. The mediator tried to steer the conversation, but the accusations flew faster than ever. Some cast members suggested that a jealous outsider might have leaked the tape to stir trouble, while others whispered that someone within the group must have had access to such private material. Suspicion shifted like a spotlight, and no one was safe from scrutiny. By the end of the session, nothing was resolved. Mendeecees stormed out first, slamming the door behind him while Kirk muttered insults under his breath. Yandy collapsed in her chair, her hands trembling, as Rashida rubbed her back sympathetically. "You've got to be strong," Rashida murmured, though even she wasn't entirely convinced of Yandy's innocence. Outside the studio, paparazzi swarmed, snapping photos of the cast members as they left. The media frenzy only amplified the chaos, with headlines speculating about betrayals, secret feuds, and the future of Yandy and Mendeecees' marriage. Fans dissected every expression, every gesture, turning social media into a battlefield of opinions. Back at home, Mendeecees found himself consumed by doubt. He wanted to believe his wife, but the whispers wouldn't leave his mind. What if there was some truth to the rumors? What if the tape wasn't fake? Pacing his living room, he replayed every interaction with Yandy in his head, searching for signs he might have missed. Frustration and fear twisted into anger. And before long, he was on the phone calling friends and contacts, determined to track down the source of the leak himself. While Mendeecees was on his mission, Yandy turned to her own circle for support. She confided in a close friend, her voice heavy with despair. "I feel like I'm drowning," she admitted. "He doesn't trust me, and everyone is looking at me like I did something wrong. I can't take it anymore." Her friend urged her to stay strong, reminding her that scandals always pass. But Yandy wasn't so sure. The look in Mendeecees' eyes. Meanwhile, Kirk and Rashida's home became a battlefield of its own. Rashida was furious that Kirk's smug behavior was making things worse. and their heated argument stretched late into the night. "You don't understand what you've done," she yelled at him. "This isn't just drama for TV. This is people's lives. And now everyone thinks you're behind it." Kirk brushed her off, but deep down, even he was starting to wonder if the suspicion surrounding him would ever go. The production team continued to capitalize on the drama, leaking teasers that hinted at explosive confrontations and shocking revelations. Fans eagerly awaited the next episode, their curiosity reaching a fever pitch. But behind the scenes, the cast was unraveling. Alliances shifted daily, friendships crumbled, and paranoia spread like wildfire. Mendeecees. Investigation took an unexpected turn when he received a cryptic message from an anonymous source. The message claimed to have information about the leak, but it came with a warning: be careful who you trust. The vague words only fueled his determination. He agreed to meet the source in a private location. Desperate for answers, the meeting, however, left him more shaken than before. The source suggested that the leak might have come from someone shockingly close to him, someone he would never suspect. Though no names were given, the implication gnawed at him, sending him into a spiral of suspicion that touched even his closest allies. As the days dragged on, the atmosphere both on and off set grew darker. The scandal wasn't dying down, it was escalating. Every attempt to calm the situation only seemed to add new layers of confusion and mistrust. Fans speculated wildly. The media fanned the flames, and the cast members themselves became prisoners of the chaos. For Yandy, the hardest part was the silence at home. Nights passed without meaningful conversations, her husband locked away in his own anger and doubts. She longed for reassurance, for the warmth of the man who had once promised to stand by her no matter what. But all she felt now was distance, and it terrified her that their bond might never recover by the end of that week. It was clear the scandal had become more than just a leaked tape or a fight on set. It had morphed into a storm that threatened to tear apart marriages, friendships, and reputations. No one knew how much more they could endure. But one thing was undeniable: things would never be the same again. The days following the chaotic sit-down were filled with uncertainty. Every phone call, every text message, every post on social media carried an undertone of suspicion. The bond between the cast was fractured, and the air around them thickened with mistrust. Fans who once celebrated their stories now watched with a mix of fascination and horror as the drama unfolded in real time. Yandy sat alone in her bedroom late one evening, staring at the ceiling as her mind raced. The laughter of her children in the other room was a small comfort, but her heart was heavy. She couldn't shake the feeling that her marriage was slipping through her fingers. The image of Mendeecees storming out of the studio replayed in her mind over and over. She picked up her phone, typing out a message to him. "We need to talk. I can't live like this." But she deleted it before sending. The silence between them was its own punishment. Mendeecees, meanwhile, was growing more restless. His search for the truth had become an obsession, consuming his every thought. The cryptic message from the anonymous source echoed in his mind, keeping him awake at night. Who could be behind this? Who would go to such lengths to destroy his family? He replayed every interaction with Kirk, with Rashida, even with producers trying to piece together the puzzle. But the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. RASHEED, I found herself torn between loyalty to her husband and compassion for Yandy. She knew Kirk wasn't innocent, his history of reckless decisions was proof enough. But she also didn't want to believe he could sink so low as to ruin another family. Sitting on her porch one evening, she confided in a close friend. "I don't even know who to believe anymore," she admitted. "Every time I look at Kirk, I see a man who's hiding something. And every time I look at Yandy, I see someone who's broken. This is tearing everyone apart." Back on set, the tension was unbearable. The producers insisted on filming a group dinner, hoping to capture the raw emotions boiling just beneath the surface. The cast arrived one by one, their faces strained, their voices low. The cameras rolled as they sat around the table, the clinking of silverware the only sound for several long moments. Then Kirk spoke, his tone casual, but his words sharp. "I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I didn't leak anything. And honestly, I'm tired of being accused." His eyes locked on Mendeecees, daring him to respond. Mendeecees leaned forward, his voice steady but cold. "Then explain why your name keeps coming up. Explain why people keep telling me you've been talking behind my back. You want to act like you're innocent, but I know you've got something to hide." Rashida slammed her hand on the table, her patience finally snapping. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping anyone. We're all supposed to be a family here, but all I see is destruction. Do you even hear yourselves?" Yandy's voice cracked as she finally spoke. "You all are fighting over something that's ruining my life. Do you even care what this is doing to me? I wake up every day to people calling me names, questioning my character, tearing me apart. And the man I love doesn't even believe me." Her words silenced the table, leaving everyone staring at her in guilt and discomfort. For a brief moment, the group seemed to soften. Kirk looked away, unable to meet her eyes, while Mendeecees shifted in his seat, his expression torn between anger and regret. Rashida reached for Yandy's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "You're not alone," she whispered, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. But the fragile peace didn't last. One of the producers whispered something to another, and the cameras caught it. The cast immediately grew suspicious. "What was that?" Mendeecees demanded, his eyes narrowing. The room fell silent as the producer hesitated, then finally admitted that the leak might not have come from any of them, but from within the production team itself. The revelation was like a bomb exploding in the room. Gasps echoed around the table as everyone processed the possibility. "Are you serious right now?" Yandy asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "You mean to tell me all this chaos, all this pain, might be because of someone behind the cameras?" Mendeecees stood up, his anger boiling over. "You let us tear each other apart while you sat back and filmed it. You let my family be destroyed for ratings." His fists clenched as he glared at the crew, his body tense with rage. Kirk muttered under his breath, "Sounds about right," but his attempt at humor only fueled the fire. The producers scrambled to calm the situation, insisting that nothing had been confirmed, but the damage was done. The cast no longer trusted the people who were supposed to tell their stories. The idea that the leak had been orchestrated for entertainment was almost too much to bear. Outside of filming, the fallout continued. Fans erupted online, demanding answers from the network. Hashtags trended as viewers accused the producers of exploiting the cast for drama. Some fans even threatened to boycott the show unless the truth came out. The pressure on everyone involved grew unbearable. Rashida confronted Kirk later that night, her frustrations spilling over. "Do you see what's happening? This isn't just about us anymore. This is bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than all of us. If the producers did this, we've been nothing but pawns in their game." Kirk shrugged, his arrogance still intact. "Welcome to reality TV, babe. This is how it works." His indifference only deepened the rift between them. Yandy, desperate for answers, decided to take matters into her own hands. She reached out to a contact in the media world, someone who had dealt with leaks before. "I need to know who's behind this," she pleaded. "I can't live like this anymore." The contact agreed to investigate, warning her that the truth might be uglier than she imagined. As the investigation unfolded, shocking details began to emerge. Whispers of payoffs, secret deals, and manipulated storylines painted a disturbing picture of what might really be happening behind the scenes. Yandy found herself caught between relief that she wasn't the one responsible and horror at the lengths people would go for fame and money. Mendeecees, too, was forced to reevaluate everything he thought he knew. When he learned about the possibility of producer involvement, his anger shifted from Kirk to the people running the show. But the damage to his marriage remained. Trust, once broken, was not so easily repaired. The tension reached a boiling point when the cast was called in for another group meeting, this time with executives present. The atmosphere was electric, everyone on edge, waiting for answers. The executives promised transparency, but their vague responses only fueled suspicion. "We take these allegations seriously," one of them said, "but we assure you, no one on our team would ever compromise your privacy." The words rang hollow. Yandy's eyes filled with tears as she realized how little control she had over her own story. Mendeecees sat beside her, his arm. Rashida, exhausted from trying to hold everything together, simply shook her head in disbelief. The meeting ended without resolution, leaving everyone more frustrated than before. Outside, paparazzi once again captured the cast as they left the building. Their faces grim, their silence speaking louder than words. Fans dissected the images, speculating about who was guilty and who was innocent. Their obsession with the scandal showing no signs of slowing down in the midst of the chaos. Friendships were tested, marriages strained, and reputations tarnished. The line between reality and entertainment blurred beyond recognition, leaving the cast to wonder if they would ever escape the storm. But one thing was clear. The scandal had taken on a life of its own, and it wasn't done wreaking havoc yet. The tension that had been brewing for hours finally erupted into a storm no one saw coming. Kirk, still fuming from the humiliating confrontation earlier, refused to leave the set without having the final word. The crew members whispered nervously among themselves, unsure if the cameras should keep rolling or if it was time to cut everything short. Yandy sat in the corner, her hands shaking, her face